Pastor Russ here with a spiritual thought for the day. Every one of us have experienced fear or have been afraid. Fear or being afraid is simply a natural God-given instinct for our protection. Many of you probably have seen pictures of a lady on social media who was taking a picture in one of our national parks of a bear. She was so intent on focusing her lens in on the bear, she didn't realize that the bear had come within about 10 yards of her. Finally, when she lifted her head and saw what was going on, she obviously had incredible fear and fled for her life. During this time where the COVID virus has rocked our nation and our world, there are many with compromised immune systems who have legitimately been afraid that if they catch the virus, they may lose their lives. Others are fearful what might happen to their families. Some fearful may lose their job. Others may be fearful they're just getting older. The most important thing is not that we have fear, but what do we do with our fear? Extreme fear can paralyze us. It can immobilize us from moving forward in life. It's almost like if that lady who was taking the picture of the bear had looked up, realized how close the bear was, instead of fleeing, if she had just been frozen with fear, she might have wound up being the bear's lunch that day. God gave us the emotion of fear to drive us to safety and protection. 365 times in Scripture, we are told to fear not. It's almost like someone said God has a great sense of humor. He knows how we would have to deal with fear or being afraid. He gave us one for every day of the year. But when God says to fear not, He's telling us and warning us to place our trust in Him. King David, the only person in the Bible that it is written that he was a man after God's own heart, and yet David experienced fear. He had to run from his life early on when he was a servant of King Saul for fear that King Saul was going to take his life. So he had to hide in caves out in the countryside. Later on, one of his own sons tried to overthrow David as king. He had to flee the capital city of Jerusalem. The first step to overcoming fear is to admit we are afraid. When David was afraid, here's what he said. This is in Psalm 56:3. When I am afraid, I will put my trust in you, God. I read a story about a mother dealing with a young child, one of her children, who was afraid to move around the house at nighttime. She simply said to her child this, "Be afraid, but go." Because the child believed her mother, it helped the young child to overcome her fears. I would simply add to that advice she gave her child. Be afraid. It's okay to be afraid, but go to God. Admit our fears when they come into our life, but depend on God to help us move forward. If we consistently do that, I think what we'll find happening over time is this, that God will help you remove the fear out of fear.